The old one? Now that'll be something interesting.
This is Frank. He runs.
Pairing. Audio device connected.
Yup, the USA for market. Yeah, I've been watching a long time.
This is sustainable camping supplies. He's smiling because FedEx is growing its fleet of electric.
The Sentinel by Lee Child and Andrew Child. Read by Jeff Harding. Chapter 1. Rusty Rutherford emerged from his apartment on a Monday morning, exactly 1 week after he got fired. He spent the first few days after the axe fell with his blinds drawn, working through his stockpile of frozen pizzas and waiting for the phone to ring. Significant weaknesses, the dismissal letter said. Profound failure of leadership. Basic and fundamental errors. It was unbelievable. Such a distortion of the truth. And so unfair. They were actually trying to pin the town's recent problems on him. It was a mistake, plain and simple, which meant it was certain to be corrected. And soon. The hours crawled past, his phone stayed silent, and his personal email silted up with nothing more than spam. He resisted for another full day, then grabbed his old laptop and powered it up. He didn't own a gun or a knife. He didn't know how to rappel from a helicopter or parachute from a plane. But still, someone had to pay. Maybe his real-life enemies were going to get away with it. This time. But not the villains in the video games a developer buddy had sent him. He had shied away from playing them before. The violence felt too extreme, too unnecessary. It didn't feel that way anymore. His days of showing mercy were over. Unless... His phone stayed silent. 24 hours later, he had a slew of new high scores and a mild case of dehydration. But not much else had changed. He closed the computer and slumped back on his couch. He stayed there for the best part of another day, picking at random from a stack of Blu-rays he didn't remember buying, and silently begging the universe to send him back to work. He would be different, he swore. Easier to get along with, more patient, diplomatic, empathetic even. He would buy donuts for everyone in the office, twice a month, 3 times if that had sealed the deal. His phone stayed silent. He didn't often drink, but what else was there left to do? The credits began to roll at the end of another disc. He couldn't stomach another movie, so he retreated to the kitchen, retrieved an unopened bottle of Jim Beam from the back of the cabinet, returned to the living room and put a scratchy old Elmore James LP on the turntable. He wound up asleep, face down on the floor, after... he wasn't sure how long. All he knew was that when he woke up, his head felt like it was crammed full of rocks, shifting and grinding as if they were trying to burst out of his skull. He thought the pain would never end. But when his hangover did finally pass, he found himself experiencing a new emotion. Defiance. He was an innocent man, after all. None of the bad things that had happened were his fault. That was for damn sure. He was the one who'd foreseen them, who'd warned his boss about them, time after time, in public and in private, and who'd been ignored time after time. So after 7 days holed up alone, Rutherford decided it was time to show his face, to tell his side of the story, to anyone who would listen. He took a shower and dug some clothes out of his closet. Chinos and a polo shirt, brand new, somber colors with logos to show he meant business. Then he retrieved his shoes from the opposite corners of the hallway where he'd flung them, scooped up his keys and sunglasses from the bookcase by the door, stepped out into the corridor, rode down in the elevator alone, crossed the lobby, pushed through the heavy revolving door, and paused on the sidewalk. The mid-morning sun felt like a blast furnace, and its sudden heat drew beads of sweat from his forehead and armpits. He felt a flutter of panic. Guilty people's sweat. He'd read that somewhere, and the one thing he was desperate to avoid was looking guilty. He glanced around, convinced that everyone would be staring at him, then forced himself to move. He picked up the pace, feeling more conspicuous than if he'd been walking down the street naked. But the truth was that most of the people he passed didn't even notice he was there. In fact, only 2 of them paid him any attention at all. At the same time Rusty Rutherford was coming out of his apartment, Jack Reacher was breaking into a bar. He was in Nashville, Tennessee, 75 miles north and east of Rutherford's sleepy little town, and he was searching for the solution to a problem. It was a practical matter, primarily, a question of physics and biology. Specifically, how to suspend a guy from a ceiling without causing too much permanent damage. To the ceiling, at least. He was less concerned about the guy. The ceiling belonged to the bar, and the bar belonged to the guy. Reacher had first set foot in the place a little over a day earlier, on Saturday, almost Sunday, because it was close to midnight by the time he got into town. His journey had not been smooth. The first bus he rode caught on fire, and its replacement got wedged under a low bridge after its driver took a wrong turn 20 miles out. Reacher was stiff from the prolonged sitting when he eventually climbed out at the Greyhound station, so he moved away to the side near the smoker's pen and took a few minutes to stretch the soreness out of his muscles and joints. He stood there, half hidden in the shadows, while the rest of the passengers milled around and talked and did things with their phones and reclaimed their luggage and gradually drifted away. Reacher stayed where he was. He was in no hurry. He'd arrived later than expected, but that was no major problem. He had no appointments to keep, no meetings to attend. No one was waiting for him, getting worried or getting mad.
Today's electric superhighway is energized by FTL, powering the EV revolution with worry-free.
He planned to find a place to stay for the night, a diner for some food, and a bar where he could hear some good music. He should still be able to do all those things. He'd maybe have to switch the order around, maybe combine a couple of activities, but he'd live. And with some hotels, the kind Reacher preferred, it can work to show up late, especially if you're paying cash, which he always did. Music first, Reacher decided. He knew there was no shortage of venues in Nashville, but he wanted a particular kind of place, somewhere warm, with some history, where Blind Blake could have played back in the day, Howlin' Wolf even. Certainly nowhere new or gentrified or gussied up. The only question was how to find a place like that. The lights were still on in the bus depot, and a handful of people were still working or waiting or just keeping themselves off the street. Some of them were bound to be local. Maybe all of them were. Reacher could have asked for directions, but he didn't go in. He preferred to navigate by instinct. He knew cities. He could read their shape and flow like a sailor can sense the direction of the coming waves. His gut told him to go north, so he set off across a broad triangular intersection and onto a vacant lot strewn with rubble. The heavy odor of diesel and cigarettes faded behind him, and his shadow grew longer in front as he walked. It led the way to rows of narrow parallel streets lined with similar brick buildings stained with soot. It felt industrial, but decayed and hollow. Preacher didn't know what kinds of businesses had thrived in Nashville's past, but whatever had been made or sold or stored, it had clearly happened around there, and it clearly wasn't happening anymore. The structures were all that remained, and not for much longer, they thought. Either money would flow in and shore them up, or they'd collapse. Preacher stepped off the crumbling sidewalk and continued down the center of the street. He figured he'd give it another 2 blocks, 3 at the most. If he hadn't found anything good by then, he'd strike out to the right, towards the river. He passed a place that sold part-worn tires, a warehouse that charity was using to store donated furniture. Then, as he crossed the next street, he picked up the rumble of a bass guitar and the thunder of drums. The sound was coming from a building in the center of the block. It didn't look promising. There were no windows, no signage, just a thin strip of yellow light escaping from beneath a single wooden door. Preacher didn't like places with few potential exits, so he was inclined to keep walking. But as he drew level, the door opened. 2 guys, maybe in their late 20s, with sleeveless t-shirts and a smattering of anemic tattoos, stumbled out onto the sidewalk. Preacher moved to avoid them, and at the same moment, the guitar began to wail from inside. Preacher paused. The riff was good. It built and swelled and soared, and just as it seemed to be done and its final note was dying away, a woman's voice took over. It was mournful, desperate, agonizing, like a conduit to a world of the deepest imaginable sorrow. Preacher couldn't resist. He stepped across the threshold. The air inside smelled of beer and sweat, and the space was much shallower front to back than Reacher had expected. It was also wider, effectively creating 2 separate areas with a dead zone down the middle. The right-hand side was for the music lovers. There were a couple dozen that night, some standing, some dancing, some doing a bit of both. The stage was beyond them, against the far wall, taking up the full depth of the room. It was low, built out of beer crates with some kind of wooden sheeting nailed across the top. There was a modest speaker stack at each side, and a pair of metal bars hanging from the ceiling to hold the lights. The singer was front and center. She seemed tiny to Reacher, 5 feet tall at the most, and as thin as a needle. Her hair was in a perfect blonde bob that shone so brightly Reacher wondered if it was a wig. The guitar player was to her left, nearest the door. The bassist mirrored him on her right. They both had wild curly hair and high sharp cheekbones, and looked so alike they could have been twins, certainly brothers. The drummer was there too, pounding out the beat, but the shadow at the back of the stage was too deep for Reacher to see her clearly. The left-hand side was for drinking. There were 6 round tables, each with 4 chairs and 4 stools at the bar, which was set against the wall opposite the stage. It was kitted out with the usual array of beer pumps and bottle fridges and spirit dispensers. A mirror ran its full width with a jagged star-shaped fracture midway up the center, the result of a bottle being thrown, Reacher thought. He liked the way it looked. It added character. But it wasn't enough to outweigh the biggest flaw in the place.
Sophie?
Not here yet.
Fathers play a big role in their daughter's life.
The section of ceiling in front of the bar. Hanging from it were dozens of bras, maybe hundreds. There were all kinds of styles and colors and sizes. Where they'd come from, Reacher didn't want to know. It seemed sleazy to him, unnecessary, and bad from a practical point of view. To get to the bar, anyone reasonably tall would have to either push his way through or stoop down beneath them. Reacher waited until the band finished their last song, then bent at the waist and pivoted around until he was close enough to snag a bar stool. He was the only one on that side of the room, and he couldn't tell from the bartender's blank expression whether that was a situation he was happy with or not. "Coffee," Reacher said, when the bartender finally acknowledged him. "Black." "Don't have coffee," the bartender replied. "Okay, cheeseburger, fries, no lettuce, no pickle, and a Coke." "Don't have cheeseburgers." "What food do you have?" "Don't have food." "Where around here does?" The bartender shrugged. "Don't live around here." Reacher took his Coke and turned to look at the stage. He was hoping another band would set up, but there was no sign of activity. Half the audience had drifted across and congregated around the tables. The rest had already made for the door. With no more music and no hope of food, Reacher figured he might as well finish his drink and follow them out. He continued in the direction he'd been going before he was lured inside. But when he reached the alley at the far end of the building, he heard a scuffling noise. He turned and almost collided with the guitar player from the band he just heard. The guy took a step back, his eyes wide with fear and his guitar case raised like a shield. The singer almost piled into him from behind. Reacher held up his hands, palms facing out. He was aware of the effect his appearance could have. He was 6'5", 250 pounds. His hair was a disheveled mess. He was unshaved. Children had been known to run screaming at the sight of him. "I'm sorry, guys." Reacher attempted a reassuring smile. "I didn't mean to startle you." The guitarist lowered his case, but he didn't step forward. "Great performance tonight, by the way," Reacher said. "When are you playing again?" "Thanks." The guitarist stayed back. "Soon, I hope." "Here?" "No chance." "Why? Bad crowd?" "No, bad owner."
Wait,
The singer glared up at Reacher.
why are you here? Do you work for him?
"I don't work for anyone," Reacher said. "But what's bad about the owner? What's the problem?" The singer hesitated, then held up.
Hello?
Hi, honey.
Hey, what's up?
Nothing. My daughter said she paid for hair for me, right?
She didn't pay for it yet, but she's going to. Yeah, but she's.
gonna pay for one.
Yeah. What style you want?
I guess she want me to wear something low, short.
She told me long.
I like long. You might prefer long.
So you want something short?
No, I do long.
Oh. But you
Which one
just
you
said
do
short.
quicker? Yeah.
So which one?
Which one you can do quicker?
Well, I can make something long. Well, either way it go, I'll make it before you come.
Okay, so when you want me to come?
You just gotta tell me which one you want though first. You want something long or short? Well, you said
Give
long.
me something long. Yeah, I like it long.
Okay.
Give me something long. And what
Okay.
day can I come?
You can come. When are you trying to? Oh, she said Friday. What day you want to come?
If I could come Thursday or Friday, doesn't matter.
So
In
Thursday.
the morning though. Early.
Okay, I have a 9 o'clock.
What day?
You want to come Thursday at 9?
Perfect.
Is this your new number?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm
this
gonna.
is number, yeah.
This is okay. Okay, I'm gonna lock it in, and then I'm gonna send you your appointment time, and then I'll
Okay.
put what color.
I don't like black.
So you want some blonde?
Pink, green, burgundy. Pink, green. 613.
Okay. All right, so I'll put you together something pretty and long.
Okay.
Okay, I'll see you then. I'll send it tonight.
Okay, thanks.
All right, sweetie. Bye bye.
A finger and another.
He wouldn't pay it, and he ripped us off. He stole a guitar.
"One of mine," the guitarist said. "My good spare." "Really?" Reacher stepped back. "That doesn't sound like good business practice. There has to be more to the story."
Like what?
The singer looked at the guitarist. "Like nothing,"
Thank
he
you.
said. "We finished our set, packed up, asked for our money. He refused." "I don't get it." Reacher paused. "A place like this, music's the draw, not the decor, that's for damn sure. You need bands to have music. And if you don't pay the bands, how do you get them to play? Sounds like a self-defeating strategy to me. You must have done something to piss them off." "You don't get the music business." The guitarist shook his head. "Explain it to me." "Why?" "Why? Because I'm asking you to. I like information. Learning is a virtue." The guitarist rested his case on the ground. "What's to explain?" This kind of thing happens all the time. There's nothing we can do about it.
Bands don't have the power.
The singer put her hand on the guitarist's shoulder.
The venues do.
Isn't there anyone who could help you put things right? Your manager? Your agent? Don't musicians have those kinds of people? The guitarist shook his head. Successful musicians, maybe. Not us.
Not yet.
The singer said. The police, then?
No.
The singer's hand brushed her jacket pocket.
No police.
We can't involve them, the guitarist said. We get a name for being difficult, no one will book us. What's the point in getting booked if you don't get paid?
The point is we get to play. People hear us.
The singer tapped the side of her head.
You can't get discovered if you don't get heard.
I guess. Reacher paused. Although, if I'm honest, I think you need to consider the message you're sending. What message? The guitarist leaned one shoulder against the wall. Suck it up. That's all we can do.
That's how we're gonna make it.
The singer said.
In the end.
Reacher said nothing.
What? You think we're doing the wrong thing?
Maybe I'm out of line. Reacher looked at each of them in turn. But it seems to me you're telling the club owners it's okay to rip you off, that you're happy not to get paid.
That's crazy.
The singer said.
I hate not getting paid. It's the worst.
Did you make that clear? Of course. The guitar player straightened up. I did. I insisted he pay us. He made like he was going to and took me to his office. Only a guy was waiting there. The bouncer. He's huge. They must have planned the whole thing in advance because he didn't say anything. Didn't wait. Just grabbed my hand. My left. He held up his left hand to emphasize the point. He grabbed it and pushed it down onto the desk where there's this kind of metal plate. It's all dented and stained. Anyway, he held my hand there, and the owner went around the desk and opened the top drawer. He took out a hammer, used the claw thing to spread my fingers apart, then said I had to choose. We could have the money or he'd break my fingers, one at a time. Or I could leave unhurt with no cash. Reacher was conscious of a voice in his head telling him to walk away, saying this wasn't his problem. But he had heard how the guy could make the guitar wail. He remembered watching his fingers when he was on stage. They were the opposite of Reacher's own, quick and delicate, dancing across the strings. He pictured the thug grabbing his hand, the owner wielding the hammer. He stayed where he was. If you like, I could go back in there, Reacher said. Help the owner see things from a different angle, maybe get him to reconsider tonight's fee.
You could do that?
The singer didn't look convinced. I've been told I can be very persuasive.
You could get hurt.
Someone could, not me. He has a hammer. The guitarist shuffled on the spot. I doubt the hammer will come into play, and there wouldn't be a problem if it did. So, why don't I give it a try? What do you got to lose? I'm not sure I'm...
Thank you.
The singer cut him off.
We appreciate any help you can give us. Just please be careful.
I always am, Reacher said. Now, tell me about the guitar, your good spare. The guy really stole it? The big guy did, the guitarist said. Kind of. He followed me down from the office and snatched it. Then he tossed it down the stairs to the basement and looked at me all weird like he was daring me to go get it. You left it there? The guitarist looked away. Don't feel bad. That was the right move. Reacher paused. Was it worth much? $1,000, maybe? The guitarist shrugged. That's a lot to me. And the owner with the hammer, what's his name? Lockhart. Derek Lockhart. How much did he promise to pay you? $200. Okay. And aside from Lockhart, the guy who was with him in the office and the bartender, who else works there? No one.
There is someone.
The singer said.
A kid who busses tables. He's out back most of the time smoking weed.
Anyone else?
No.
Have you seen any weapons on the premises? They looked at one another and shook their heads. Okay then. Where's Lockhart's office? second floor, the guitarist said. Stairs are past the bathrooms. Back inside, a solitary customer was nursing his last bottle of beer. The barman was shoving a threadbare broom across the floor between the tables and the stage. There was no sign of anyone else, so Reacher made his way past the bathrooms and crept up the stairs. He saw one door leading off a narrow landing. It was closed. Reacher could hear a voice on the other side. It was male, he was sure of that, but he couldn't make out any words. It was soft, rhythmic, like someone counting. Probably checking the week's take. So they'd likely be locked in. Reacher took hold of the handle, turned it, and simultaneously slammed his shoulder into the door. It gave easily, sending fragments of splintered wood spinning into the air. I'm sorry, gentlemen. He stepped into the room and pushed the door back into its ruined frame. I didn't realize that was locked. The space was small, more like a closet than an office. Two men were crammed in behind the desk, shoulder to shoulder. The regular-sized guy Reacher took to be Lockhart. The other, a slack, flabby giant, would be the bouncer. Both were frozen in their seats, and the surface of the desk was covered with heaps of greasy banknotes. Who the hell are you? It took Lockhart a moment to find his voice. My name's Jack Reacher. I represent the band that played for you tonight. I'm here to talk about their contract. They don't have a contract. They do now. Reacher took hold of a bentwood chair, which was the only other piece of furniture in the room, tested its strength, and sat down. Time for you to leave, Lockhart said. I only just got here. You can't be here, not during the count. You didn't think that through all the way, did you? Lockhart paused, searching for a trap. What do you mean? You said I can't be here, and yet clearly I am. Faulty reasoning on your part. You can leave, Lockhart spoke with exaggerated clarity, or I can throw you out. You can throw me out? Reacher allowed himself a smile. Lockhart's fist clenched on the desk in front of him. I can have you thrown out. Are you sure? Where are all your guys? I have all the guys I need right here. Lockhart pointed to his companion. Him? For a start, he's one guy, singular. So you'd have to say, the only guy I need. But that's not right either, is it? Because he's obviously not up to the job. I could be asleep and he couldn't throw me out. I could have died of old age and he still couldn't do it. Reacher was watching the big guy's eyes throughout the whole exchange. He saw them flicker towards Lockhart. Saw Lockhart respond with the tiniest nod of his head. The big guy rose out of his chair. Reacher knew there was only one possible play that stood any chance of success. The guy could launch himself straight over the desk. If he was quick enough, he'd arrive before Reacher was on his feet. But even if Reacher was already standing, the guy would still have his most powerful weapon, his weight. He had at least 100 pounds on Reacher. Coupled with the speed he'd have gained diving forward, all those pounds would translate into some formidable momentum. There'd be no way for Reacher to counter it. He'd be knocked backwards onto the floor, pinned down, jammed in the corner, unable to bring his fists or feet or elbows to bear, and unable to breathe. Then all the guy would have to do would be wait. Physics would finish the fight for him. He could just lie there till Reacher passed out. It would be the easiest victory he ever won. The guy made the wrong choice. Instead of diving over the table, he tried to shimmy around it. That was a serious mistake for someone with his build. Reacher's goading had clouded his thinking. He wasn't focused on the win. He was picturing the pummeling he could dish out, which gave Reacher time to scoop up the metal plate from the desk, grip it securely with one edge against his palms, and drive it up into the guy's onrushing neck like a reverse guillotine blade, crushing his larynx and windpipe. Then Reacher shoved him square in the face, and the guy fell back in the direction he came from and landed, choking and spluttering in the corner. Normally, I wouldn't have done that, Reacher said, settling back in his chair. Not right off the bat. I'd have given him a chance to walk away. But then I remembered he was the one who took the kid's guitar, so I figured all bets were off. Lockhart was scrabbling for his phone. We should call 911, quick. Your friend will be fine, Preacher said. Or maybe he won't. But in the meantime, while he's dealing with his breathing issues, let's get back to the band's contract. You promised to pay how much? I promised nothing. Preacher ran his finger along the edge of the plate. I think you did. Lockhart lunged sideways, going for his drawer. Preacher tracked his movement and tossed the plate, spinning it like a frisbee. It caught Lockhart on the bridge of his nose, shattering the bone and locking him back in his chair. I'm beginning to think this toy is dangerous. Preacher picked up the plate and dropped it on the floor. You shouldn't play with it anymore. Now, the contract. Give me a number.
Find inspiration.
Hey, hey.
Hey, what's up?
Oh my God, when you called me, I was at work.
I figured. I knew you was at work.
I was at the office. So, what was the question? I just breezed through.
Yeah,
The tax ID and what else?
and that name done.
You mean as a business, like an LLC?
Yup.
Yeah, you know how to do it. See what
I know, but I forgot. I forgot how to do it.
Seaborn, I am going to create you a step-by-step SOP of how to create your own business.
Okay.
Register your business.
Okay.
Because me and you went through this whole
We did.
thing.
Hey, it expired. It expired. So now I had to do it
Did you not
over.
renew it? You gotta pay for it
Yeah.
every year.
Now I'm gonna just do another one. I'm gonna do another one with a different name now. So I was like, let me call
Can
you.
you see if you can just reuse the same name again?
No, they're gonna charge me $700.
Yeah, that's because they charge you like a $400 late fee or something like that.
Yeah.
It's bananas.
So I'll
You
just
gotta
do.
pay it every year.
Yeah, I'll just do a new one and be done with
Oh
it.
my God. Yeah, so I haven't even gotten home yet. I'm still driving. I'm on 167 by your old place.
Okay.
Over here by the Regent's Bank. So
Okay.
when I get home, I'm gonna shower. I will send me your email address.
Okay.
I'm gonna send you the website. I'll text you the link so you know exactly where to go.
Okay.
I'll tell you step by step which links to tap on, what to do, and I think it was like $100 and something.
Yep, that's why I want to take care of it tonight.
Yeah, you can do that tonight. And once you do it tonight, they'll ask you if you want the business to be if you want it to be registered and given a document number. Like the same day, you can do it the same day, or you can do it for a later date if you want.
Okay,
It's
perfect.
up to you. But I'll send you the step-by-step when I get to the house and I get
Okay.
situated.
That's perfect. That's what I needed. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
No problem. And then once you finish doing the LLC, because you can't do the tax ID without the LLC. They won't let you do it, remember?
Yeah.
You have to have that document number from your LLC to be able to do your tax ID. So once you finish doing your LLC, I'm going to also send you the link for the IRS so you can do your tax ID, and it's free. But always remember to print your tax ID once you get it, because you only get it that one time.
Okay.
Like if you lose it, you're going to have to literally like fucking write them or go into the business tax office and have them reissue another one.
Okay, I'm gonna screenshot it and take a picture of it too.
And you have to print it. Print it.
Okay.
Okay? Print it.
Okay.
Alright, so when I get home, I will send you everything once I'm situated.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Lifesaver.
You are welcome, babe. Call me anytime for whatever you need. Oh my God. One of my cousins just got her sleeve done in Colombia, and guess how much they charged her?
$2,000.
$4,800.
Oh shit. One of my customers, she just went to Mexico, her and her daughter, and got it.
And how much they charge
It was 4,000.
Yeah, that's around the price they're charging.
Yeah.
That's really fucking good.
That's really good. I'm gonna see what I can do.
What happened with the whole thing with the person that was supposed to help you with the Medicaid to get Medicaid to pay for it?
She never went through. It never went through. The girl.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I said, well, I'll try again another time. But now I've been working on my credit, so like I might be at that 800 soon. So then I'll be able to pay for it.
That.
Yeah, then I'll be able to just pay for it. Cause that's what it's looking like gonna happen.
Hell yeah. Oh Lord, driving on 6th Ave is like bad for your health. I
Yeah,
swear.
it's a nightmare, dog. Wait till you get to the freeway.
All right, so I will talk to you soon. Don't forget to send me your email address.
Okay. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
All right, babes, anytime. Call
Okay,
me
sweetie.
anytime.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.
Search one and done.
$200. $200 was the original figure. But since it was agreed, you've revealed an interest in human fingers. Tell me, how many are there on a guitar player's left hand, for example? 5. Lockhart's voice was muffled thanks to his restricted airway. Technically, there are 4. The other digit is thumb. But I'll take your answer. So, $200 multiplied by 5 is 1,000. Very good. That's our new figure. We take cash. Forget it. There's plenty of cash here. If counting is too difficult for you, maybe I should just take all of it. All right. Lockhart almost squealed. He selected 2 stacks of bills and slid them across the desk. Good. Now let's add your late payment fee. That's an additional 500. Lockhart glowered and handed over another stack. We're almost done now. Next up is the equipment replacement surcharge. Around 1,000. What the? For the kid's guitar. Your buddy tossed it down some stairs. Get the money back from him if you want, but there's no way it's coming out of my client's pocket. Lockhart's eyes were flickering back and forth across his dwindling heap of cash. Reacher could almost see his brain working as he calculated how much he had left and whether his chances of keeping any would improve if he cooperated. Okay, another 1,000, but not 1 cent more. And tell those kids if they ever come back, I'll break more than their fingers. And even if they don't come here, they'll never play in this town again. Reacher shook his head. We were doing so well, and you had to ruin it. You didn't let me finish. We'd covered the payments, but we hadn't gotten around to the incentives. This is important, so listen carefully. Every band member I represent has me on speed dial. If anything happens to any of them, I'll come back here. I'll break your arms. I'll break your legs. And I'll hang your underwear from the ceiling of the bar while you're still wearing it. Are we clear? Lockhart nodded. Good. Now, incentive number 2. Other bands. Even if I don't represent them, I'm extending an umbrella agreement. As a courtesy. Think of it as my contribution to the arts. What it means is that if I hear about you ripping off another band, I'll come back. I'll take all your money. And I'll hang your underwear from the ceiling of the bar, same way as before. Are we clear on that, too? Lockhart nodded. Excellent. And in case you were wondering, I'll be carrying out random spot checks to test for compliance. Now, when is the next band playing here? Tomorrow. Okay. I hope they're as good as tonight's. But even if they're not, remember, they get paid. Chapter 2. Rusty Rutherford was not normally the type of guy who dawdled in his local coffee shop. He used to go to the same one every day, always on his way to work, and purely for the caffeine. He didn't go in search of conversation. He wasn't interested in finding new company. His routine was always the same. He stood quietly in line and used the time to contemplate whatever problems were in store for him that day. He placed his order, collected his drink as soon as it was ready, and left. The process was transactional, not social. Even after the week he spent isolated in his apartment, it proved a difficult habit to break. The adjustment process wasn't made any easier by the response he received from the other patrons. Normally, his was a pretty neutral presence. When people weren't pleased to see him, they weren't displeased. They displayed no curiosity, no animosity. He could have been a store mannequin for all the effect he had on the social interactions that occurred in the place. That Monday, though, he felt like a magnet with the wrong polarity.
I got some
He seemed to
pain.
repel everyone around him. The surrounding customers left a bigger space than usual on either side. In the rare moments he was able to make eye contact, the other person turned away before he could think of a way to start a conversation. By the time he reached the counter, he still hadn't exchanged a single word with a fellow human being. But he had seen how the barista interacted with the two men in front of him when they stepped up to order. She smiled at them and asked if they were their regular. She didn't smile at him, and she didn't say a word. "My regular, please," Rusty said.
Which would be what?
She asked. Rusty heard someone sniggering behind him in the line. He felt the urge to run. But no, he was there on principle, to fight for his rights. A little ridicule was not going to break his resolve. "House blend, medium, no room for milk."
$2 even.
The barista turned, grabbed a to-go cup, and slammed it on the counter.
You want 2 IVs?
"No," Rusty shook his head. "I want to drink it here." The barista shot him a look that said,
Really? I thought you didn't. Oh, that's right.
she said out loud,
I forgot. You lost your job. You don't have any place to go.
She tossed the to-go cup in the trash, took out a china one, poured, slopping coffee into the saucer, and slid it towards him, spilling even more. At the same time Rusty Rutherford was going into the coffee shop, a telephone was starting to ring. In a house a mile outside of town. In a room containing 2 people, a man and a woman. The woman recognized the ringtone the moment the phone began to chirp. She knew what it meant. Her boss was going to require privacy, so she stood up without waiting to be dismissed, closed her notebook, slid it into the pocket at the front of her apron, and made her way to the door. The man checked that the secure icon on the phone's screen was green, then hit the answer key. "This is Speransky." Speransky wasn't his real name, of course, but it might as well have been. He'd been using it professionally for more than 5 decades. The voice at the other end of the line said one word: "Contact." Speransky closed his eyes for a moment and ran the fingers of his free hand through his wild white hair. It was about time. He had made plenty of plans over the years, been involved in plenty of operations, survived plenty of crises, but never had the stakes been so high. For him, personally, and for the only person in the world he cared about. At the same time the telephone was being answered, Jack Reacher was getting into a car. He had solved his physics-biology conundrum to his satisfaction and the bar owner's extreme discomfort, and begun walking back to the bus station. He had been planning to follow his time-honored principle of taking the first bus to leave, regardless of its destination, when he heard a vehicle approaching slowly from behind. He stuck out his thumb on the off chance, and to his surprise, the car stopped. It was new and shiny and bland. A rental, probably picked up at the airport. The driver was a tidy-looking guy in his early 20s. He was wearing a plain dark suit, and the speed of his breathing and the pallor of his face suggested he wasn't
20
far
minutes.
from a full-blown
And then
panic
ease
attack.
into it.
A business
Yeah.
guy,
If you
Reacher
still
thought,
feel it, then you
let
can.
out alone
Because
for
the
the
other, I
first
think those
time,
are
desperate not to
three-
screw anything up,
300
and
milligrams.
therefore screw
So
up
it's,
everything
yeah, it's
he
not a
touched.
lot.
Oh, you take it there.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
The guy sounded even more nervous than he looked.
I do like
Do you know
two
where to
every
I-40? I need to go west.
45 minutes.
He gestured to the
I
screen
went
on his
through it.
dashboard.
If it, by the time I
The
get done, if
GPS
it's
in this
still,
thing hates
she
me.
gave me a
It
whole
keeps trying to
bunch
send me
of them,
down
so
streets that don't
I'll
exist.
just give you like maybe
Sure,
4 or 6
Reacher
more.
said, but it's
Some
hard to
6.
explain. It'd be easier to show you. The guy hesitated and looked Reacher up and down as if only just taking in his height, the breadth of his chest, his unwashed hair, his unshaved face, the web of scars around the knuckles of his enormous hands. Unless you'd prefer to keep driving aimlessly around, Reacher attempted a concerned expression. The guy swallowed. Where are you going? Anywhere. I-40 is as good a place to start as any. Well, okay. The guy paused.
I'll take you to the highway. But I'm not going far after that. No place you'd want to go, I'm sure.
How much further?
75 miles, maybe? Some small town near a place named Pleasantville? Sounds inspiring, huh?
Do they have a coffee shop in this town? The guy shrugged.
Probably. I can't say for sure. I've never been there before.
Probably's good enough for me, Reacher said. Let's go. Rutherford picked up the cup and realized he had another unfamiliar dilemma to face. Where should he sit? Deciding wasn't a problem normally. He didn't stay. And he didn't have a dozen angry eyes probing him while he searched for an answer. He fought the urge to skulk at the back of the store. That would be the least uncomfortable option for sure, but it would hardly serve his purpose. He didn't want a window seat either. He wasn't ready to put himself on display quite so prominently, so he opted for a small square table in the center. It had 2 chairs covered in red vinyl, and its top had writing scrawled across every square inch of its surface. By previous customers, he guessed. There were song lyrics, poems, uplifting sayings. He scanned the words, found none he felt any connection to, then forced himself to look up. He attempted to make eye contact with the people at the other tables, and failed. Except with a toddler, whose parents got up and left when they realized what was going on. Rusty sipped at his coffee. He wanted to make it last at least an hour. He worked his way down to the dregs, and still achieved no interaction with anyone but the barista, who missed no opportunity to shoot him hostile glares. He refilled his cup and changed tables. Neither thing brought a change of luck. He stuck it out for another 40 minutes, and then the barista approached and told him to either order some food or leave. I won't order any food, Rusty told her. I'll leave. But I'll come back tomorrow, and the next day, and every day after that until everyone believes I'm innocent. The barista gave him a blank look and retreated to the counter. Rusty stood up. Listen to me, he said. No one paid any attention. Listen to me. Rusty raised his voice. What happened to the town totally sucks. I get that. But it was not my fault. None of it. The truth is I tried to stop it from happening. And I was the only one who did. No one paid any attention. The barista leaned across the counter with a to-go cup in her hand.
Take this and leave, Mr. Rutherford. No one believes you, and no one ever will.
At the same time Rusty Rutherford was leaving the coffee shop, Jack Reacher was arriving in his town. Getting out of Nashville hadn't been a problem. Reacher had navigated using his instinct, plus the landmarks he remembered from Saturday night's bus ride, and had found the highway without getting lost. Not so lost that the driver noticed, anyway. Once they were out of the city, Reacher persuaded him to tune the radio to a local blues channel, then reclined his seat and closed his eyes. The music was half decent, but despite that, the guy wouldn't stop talking about New York, the insurance company he worked for, how this was his first case after getting a promotion to negotiator, flying out that morning for a meeting at their field office, getting lost on his way to whichever town had whatever kind of problem he was supposed to help solve. Something to do with computers and foreign governments and keys and portals and all kinds of other things Reacher had no interest in.
Oh, you did?
He let the word
How much you
over
spend?
and
I
so they
spend
looked up the
$140
windows. Only opened
every
his
time
eyes
I
when
go.
he felt the car slow and they turned onto a state highway
Oh,
heading
y'all got
south.
small. Y'all ain't get
The
dungeons.
half mile beyond the
Mom got
Cloverleaf
a crab
was teeming
bag.
with restaurants
I got,
and drive-throughs and car dealers and chain
pound of shrimp,
hotels.
mussels.
After that, the terrain opened out.
Baby got a pound of
There were
shrimp
farmers'
and,
fields where the
I got the
land was
Dungeness
flat,
crab.
stretched and warped into all
It's
kinds
so
of
good.
irregular
The
shapes
blue
and
crab
It's
is
so
so
big. Raw, ate inside or outside?
and groves of tall mature trees.
Huh?
where the
Oh, you
land
picked
was
it
steep.
up. Oh, fuck
After
that.
10
I like to
minutes,
see
they
be
swung
there.
I wanted to
west
sit
again
down,
and
but my
continued
mama showed
along a
like the
steeper,
restaurant.
twistier
Oh,
road
So I
for
had
the
to
best
just
part
like
of
get
an
my
hour
daughter.
until
You
they
know what I'm
entered
saying?
the
Go get it.
outskirts
Yeah,
of the
mama
town.
be paranoid, child.
The guy
Uh-huh.
kept driving until they found what Reacher guessed was the main
I
street,
can go
then
be
pulled
my
over.
baby.
Yeah, it was fun.
Reacher climbed out
And then you take that, put the bag over you, the bag over the whole table, and just dig in with the eggs and the potatoes. Oh, I love it. Man, you know, I think I'm gonna go.
Them was some big old
Some old
shrimp.
ones.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go.
Some newer ones to fill
Hey,
the
maybe
gaps,
let me see.
now
I took.
showing their own
I took a
age.
person. Didn't I take
The
somebody
overall
tomorrow morning?
layout unchanged.
Oh Lord!
A
Oh, that
standard
lady.
But
grid.
it was Thursday, wasn't it?
No, that lady
Required
that
traffic
called about the
signals at
wig.
one intersection
Oh.
only.
So I got to do her.
They were out that day.
And then I got a guy at
Consternation
12
among some
o'clock
of the passing
tomorrow.
Drivers.
Okay.
But aside from that, things were fine.
But you know what? He did not call me back to tell me which unit he wanted.
Feature figured he could
So,
pass a half hour there.
I'm not gonna.
There was no ancestral
I can't make it
connection,
until
no
he
intriguing
tells me what
name,
unit he
no
wants.
military
But he probably
significance,
will.
no interesting
So we'll
signs or
see.
structures, no link to any of his musical heroes, no reason to stay. No longer than it took to get the coffee anyway. Priorities were priorities. Reacher was half a block from the intersection with the broken signals at the west end of what he figured was the town's main drag. There was a coffee shop diagonally opposite. There may have been others elsewhere in the town, but Reacher saw no reason to check. He wasn't fussy. So he took advantage of the traffic chaos and started out across the street. Reacher was heading for the coffee shop. Rutherford was leaving it. Reacher didn't pay him much attention at first. He was just a guy,
that's
small
probably
and
closeted,
unremarkable, holding his to-go
You're gonna
cup,
see it,
going about
like
his
the lack of
business,
sleep.
Yeah,
whatever that may be.
yeah, it is.
But a moment
Body
later,
fight.
Reacher's
It's
interest
fighting.
ratcheted all the way up. He felt a chill at the base of his neck, a signal from some ancient warning system hardwired into the back of his brain,
They were hot, no,
an
cold.
instinctive
Oh
recognition,
yeah. Oh, it's definitely
patterns
coming.
and movement, predators
It's
circling,
definitely coming.
moving in on their prey. Two men and a woman,
And it's the
spread
change of
out,
the season.
carefully positioned,
This is
coordinated,
literally it.
ready to spring their trap.
Going from the spring.
Three
I mean,
against
from
one.
winter to
Not the
spring.
kind of odds to worry Reacher.
It is.
But Reacher was not their target. That was clear. The men were positioned at each end of the block. One was pretending to look in a store window at the west end, right before the intersection with the broken signals. The other was at the east end, where the block ended at an alleyway, pretending to do something with his phone. An envelope of maybe 130 feet. The woman was stationed on the other side of the alleyway at the start of the next block, another 10 feet away. There was a solid row of buildings to the north of the sidewalk, the street to the south. Store entrances to bolt into if the timing was right. Asphalt to run across if no traffic was coming. Rutherford was heading east. Not hurrying, not dawdling, just drifting along in his own little bubble. Not aimless, Reacher thought. More like preoccupied, following a familiar route, comfortable with his surroundings, not paying attention, not looking for store entrances, not checking the traffic. The West End guy was around 5'10". He was wearing a plain black t-shirt and cargo pants. His hair was buzzed short, and he had an earpiece like the kind Reacher had seen business people use. The East End guy was the same kind of size. He had the same clothes, the same hair, the same earpiece. The woman on the other end of the alley was also wearing black, but her clothes were more fitted, and her hair wasn't buzzed. It was long and red, and she had it tied back in a ponytail. The West End guy peeled away from his window and started walking, heading east, 15 feet behind Rutherford, moving with loose, rangy ease. He was clearly having to shorten his stride to avoid overtaking his mark. Ahead of them, a woman had stopped at the edge of the sidewalk to tend to a child in a stroller. Beyond her, a couple stood, talking. They were dressed for the gym, just regular folks, not part of the pattern, unaware of what was happening. The envelope was down to 100 feet. The East End guy touched his earpiece. A moment later, a car appeared in the mouth of the alley. It had rolled forward from somewhere deep in the shadows. An anonymous sedan, a Toyota, dark blue. Reacher saw it move rather than heard it. A hybrid in fully electric mode, he thought. A smart choice of vehicle. Too bad the 110th hadn't had them back in the day. The envelope was down to 80 feet. Reacher stepped onto the sidewalk. Rutherford approached the woman with the stroller. She stood up as he drew level. Her kid threw his teddy bear onto the ground. Rutherford leaned down and retrieved it. Maybe Rutherford wasn't as clueless as he appeared. It was a perfect maneuver to check the sidewalk behind him. Maybe Rutherford knew he was being followed after all. Then Reacher's optimism evaporated. Rutherford's eyes were only on the kid. He held out the toy. The woman snatched it away, glaring furiously. Rutherford continued walking. The envelope was down to 60 feet. Reacher changed course, started heading east, 30 feet behind the Western guy. The couple in gym clothes moved away from the wall. Their body language had hardened. Their conversation must have turned sour. The man strode forward, leading with his shoulder. He slammed into Rutherford, spilling his coffee. His partner caught up. She grabbed his arm and pulled him away, shaking her head and scowling. "Hey," Rutherford said. He didn't get a response. "Turn around," Reacher thought. "Ignore the gym rats. Notice the guy who's pursuing you." Rutherford didn't turn around. He carried on walking. The
Okay.
envelope was down to 40 feet. Another 20 feet between Reacher and the Western guy.
Okay.
It was obvious what was going to happen next. Reacher could see it as clearly as if a skywriter had spelled it out with white smoke. The car would roll a little further forward so that its rear door was level with the sidewalk. The Eastern guy would open it. The Western guy would push Rutherford inside and jump in himself. The woman would get in on the other side. The Eastern guy would take the passenger seat, and they'd drive away. Less than 5 seconds for the whole operation if they did it right. And it would be silent. No muss, no fuss. No one would see a thing. The envelope was 20 feet, 10 feet between Reacher and the Western guy. Decision time. It was 4 against 1 now. Maybe 5 or 6 against 1 if they had a mobile backup. Not the kind of odds to bother Reacher, but Reacher was not their target. The car moved up right on cue. Rutherford stopped, thinking nothing of it. Just an impatient driver taking a shortcut through the alley. He took a sip of coffee, waiting for the car to pull away. It stayed put. The Eastern guy opened the back door and held it. The other quickened his pace. He stretched out. His left hand cupped the top of Rutherford's head. His right grabbed Rutherford's elbow. He started to steer him towards the back seat, but he was too slow. All he wound up pushing was empty air. The envelope was 0 feet. Reacher was level with the Western guy on his left-hand side. He took hold of Rutherford's collar, stuck his right arm across the Western guy's chest like a steel barrier, pivoted clockwise on his right foot, pushed Rutherford back into the side, and held him there, out of anyone else's range.
Oh, sorry.
"Let's keep things civil," Reacher said. "Show me some ID, or get in the car and drive away." "Let him go," the Western guy said. "If you have a legitimate reason to detain him, you'll have some kind of official ID. If you do, show it to me. If you don't, drive away. This is your last chance." "Who the hell are you?" "Given the situation, you should stick to the relevant issues." "Who are you?" "I gave you 2 options. Asking irrelevant questions was not one of them." "Let him go." The guy went to step around Reacher, his arms stretched out, trying to grab Rutherford. Reacher hit him in the temple, and he bounced off the wall and dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. Reacher turned to the other guy. You've had your final chance. Pick up your trash and leave. Or don't and get added to the pile. Make your choice. Either way is fine with me. Reacher caught movement out of the corner of his eye. The Toyota's passenger window was rolling down. The driver was lifting her arm. She was looking directly at him. Raising a gun? Reacher didn't wait to find out. He let go of Rutherford and spun the Eastern guy around so that he was facing the car, grabbed his collar and waistband, and launched him head first through the open window, jamming him in tight, his arms pinned and his legs kicking helplessly. Reacher stepped back to avoid the flailing feet and checked that Rutherford was still there, frozen to the spot. Then he sensed, rather than heard, a heavy object racing towards them. He grabbed Rutherford and shoved him back, and a moment later, a black Chevy Suburban lurched onto the sidewalk, stopping right where Reacher had been standing. The driver's door opened and a man jumped out. He was shorter than the others and wirier. Another man jumped down from the passenger side and joined him. They stood side by side for a moment, both in a version of some strange martial arts stance, then relaxed. They stepped forward. They were comfortable together. They had clearly done this kind of thing before. "Step aside, mister," the driver said. "This isn't your fight. The guy's coming with us." Reacher shook his head. "You're not taking him. That's a given. He walks away. The only question is, will you? Or do you have some strong urge to join your buddies in the hospital?" The driver didn't reply, and Reacher became aware of a scrabbling sound on the far side of the Suburban. The guy he'd thrown through the Toyota's window had wriggled free, and along with the woman from the alley was trying to maneuver their unconscious comrade into the back seat. A ring of onlookers had formed, starting on the sidewalk and spilling onto the street. It reminded Reacher of the crowds that would gather in the playgrounds on the first day of each new school he attended growing up. Him and his brother Joe, back to back, fighting them off. He looked at Rutherford. He wasn't trying to run, which was something, but Reacher knew he'd be no help if the mob turned nasty. The two guys exchanged glances. They were considering their next move. Stealth was out of the window, so it was down to a choice between a frontal assault and a tactical withdrawal. Neither option seemed to appeal. Then a siren started up. The pedestrians scattered. The car pulled away, its gas engine kicking in as the driver buried the accelerator. The wiry guys jumped back into the Suburban and slammed it into reverse, clipping the front corner of the leading police cruiser before racing into the distance. Rutherford stayed still, his eyes wide and his mouth hanging open. A pair of police cars stopped at the side of the street and killed their sirens and light bars. 4 officers jumped out. 3 converged immediately on the sidewalk. 1 lingered to inspect the damage to his car. All had their guns drawn but not raised. They expected their numbers to give them the advantage, Reacher guessed, but were taking no chances, which seemed like a sensible attitude to take. "On the ground," the lead officer said. "Face down." "You're arresting us?" Reacher said. "What were you expecting, a lollipop? Get on the ground." Reacher didn't move. The officer stepped closer. "On the ground. Do it now." Cops are the same in the world over. Once they commit to a position in public, they never back down. Trying to make them is a waste of time. Reacher knew that from personal experience. But still, there are standards to uphold. "All right," Reacher said. "I'll let you arrest us. We'll be released in 5 minutes anyway. But we're not getting on the ground." Chapter 3. The team's temporary base had been established the week before in a motel 8 miles west of town. Traffic was light, so theoretically the ground could be covered in 12 minutes without drawing on welcome attention. But that afternoon, the occupants of both vehicles took substantially longer to get back. The guys from the Suburban made it first. It was easier for them since neither was injured. They started by heading 10 miles north. The driver, who went by the name of Vasily, gave it an initial blast to get clear of the arriving police, then slowed to just above the limit until they reached a patch of waste ground behind a dense stand of trees. The place was secluded enough, but they knew better than to torch the damaged vehicle. That would be the same thing as texting a map to the cop saying, here's the SUV you're looking for. And if it could be salvaged, the Suburban would still be a valuable asset. So they got to work. Vasily lined up on a concrete post at the end of a fence by the side of the road and slammed back into it. He pulled forward and repeated the maneuver, then climbed out to check the damage. It was satisfactory, he decided. Deep enough to obscure the dent sustained when they clipped the police car, but not so extensive as to give a different cop an excuse to pull him over. He drove around behind the trees and wiped down the interior, while his partner, who used the name Anatol, swapped the plates. Then they switched to their secondary vehicle for the final 13-mile diagonal stretch. Natasha was driving the Toyota. She started out going south for 6 miles. She took it very easy. She had an additional reason to drive slowly. She was worried about 2 of her companions. The guy Reacher had thrown through the window, Petya, had wound up with an injured shoulder. Natasha wasn't sure if the damage had been done going in or wriggling out. He had kept quiet at the time, but now his face was pale and he groaned every time they hit a bump or a pothole. Ilya, the guy Reacher hit, was still out cold. Natasha was concerned about concussion and didn't want to cause any additional damage. She wanted both of them back in the game as soon as humanly possible. It was hard not to paint what had happened that afternoon as anything but a failure. With failure comes the danger of replacement. That danger grows if the team is left under strength, and that danger had to be avoided at all costs. After 15 minutes, they pulled into a lot belonging to a chintzy roadside diner. Natasha switched plates while the other woman, Sonia, helped Petya into their secondary vehicle. Together, the 2 women transferred the unconscious Ilya and sanitized the Toyota's interior. Then they set out for the motel, looping further west than strictly necessary, which stretched the final leg out to 12 miles. Natasha had taken her time at each stage of the journey, partly due to thorough training, partly due to taking pride in doing the job right, but mainly due to how little she was looking forward to the next step in the process, the report. Making the call presented no major difficulty. There was no particular challenge in describing what had happened. She knew that her contact would listen without interruption. He'd save any questions he might have until she'd finished speaking. He'd hang up, and then there would be the wait for the verdict. Continue or stand down. A fighting chance or disaster. The information would flow up the chain of command until a decision was reached. Who that involved or where they were located, Natasha didn't know. The system was designed that way, for security. Compartmentalization was king in the world she currently inhabited. She suspected there must be a local connection, someone with their ear to the ground, who raised the alarm in the first place, who may or may not still be involved, who may or may not have a say in the outcome. Identifying him or her would be possible, she supposed, maybe necessary, certainly desirable. But that was a problem for the future. Right then, all she had to worry about was keeping her team, and therefore herself, in the field. The lead officer took care of searching Reacher. He was thorough and slow. Rutherford was in the back of the first car before the officer got as far as Reacher's waist. He was reclaiming a little authority, Reacher guessed, showing whose timetable they were working to. Reacher stood still and let him finish. Then the officer stepped to the side and made a call on his cell, while another cop guided Reacher into the back of the second car. Reacher expected the station house to be outside the main part of town, someplace where the real estate was cheaper, so he was surprised when the journey ended after 2 streets. The cop used his lights to blast through the intersection with the broken signals, took the next left, then swung left again into a lot at the side of a wide sandstone building. It was braced with Greek columns and studded with rows of parallel windows. The officer pulled up next to the car that had been hit by the Suburban and climbed out. A framed sign announced the place as the courthouse, and smaller letters underneath added that it was also home to the treasurer's department, the town clerk, and the police department. All it was lacking for full efficiency was the jail. The officer led the way past the porticoed entrance at the front of the building, which was apparently reserved for members of the public who hadn't been arrested, and continued around to the side. He stopped at a plain metal door, ignored its card reader, and unlocked it with a key, then ushered Reacher down a dimly lit flight of cement steps. They emerged at the side of a reception counter. It was glassed in all the way to the ceiling and had a full set of blinds, which were closed. On the opposite side, brass handrails lined the stairs that respectable citizens could use on their way to file reports or make inquiries or conduct whatever other kind of legitimate business regular people had. The officer pressed a buzzer, and after a moment a door opened, leading to a booking area. Another cop was waiting at a large wooden table. Behind him were 2 desks supporting worn but serviceable computers, which were currently switched off. A stack of deep plastic trays in a rainbow of colors, and a pale, droopy, potted plant. The walls were covered with posters warning against the dangers of crime and encouraging the public to take responsibility for their own safety. The cop grabbed one of the trays and dropped it on the table near where Reacher was standing. "Put your possessions in there." He sounded bored. "You'll get them back when you're released." Reacher produced his roll of cash, his toothbrush, his ATM card, and his passport. "Is that all?" "What else do I need?" Reacher said. The cop shrugged and started to count the cash. When he was done, he handed Reacher a receipt, then led the way along a corridor to a door marked Interrogation Room 2. The interior was lined with sound-muffling tiles. Reacher had seen them before. He knew they served no sonic purpose. They were part of a psychological trick designed to give suspects the illusion that they were in a place where it was safe to spill the dirt on their partners. The floor was smooth concrete, and the metal table and chairs were bolted to it. The observation window was made to look like a mirror in the usual way, and a panic strip ran around the walls at waist level. Reacher guessed they'd brought him there because they only had one cell area. They wouldn't want to take the chance of him talking to the guy he'd rescued. Too much risk of them lining up their stories. And he knew they'd make him wait. An hour at least, maybe 2. A standard tactic. Isolation breeds the urge to talk. An urge to talk can become an urge to confess. He'd used the technique himself, countless times. And this wasn't the first time it had been used against him. Both chairs were too close to the table to be comfortable, so Reacher sat on the floor in the corner opposite the door. The clock in his head told him that an hour 37 had passed by the time the door opened again. 97 minutes, the largest 2-digit prime number. One of his favorites. He took that as a good sign. A less good sign was the smug grin on the face of the man who'd entered the room. He didn't look a day over 30 and was all curly hair and rounded features. He took the chair with its back to the window and continued to smile. "I see you've made yourself at home," the man said. "Sorry to keep you waiting. Want to grab a seat? Join me? See if we can't get this thing squared away?" Reacher shrugged as if he didn't care either way, then stood, stretched, and wedged himself into the chair on the other side of the table. "I'm John Goodyear." The man's grin grew even wider. "I'm the detective here." "Jack Reacher." "I know that. But what I don't know is your deal. Why are you in my town?" "I don't have a deal. I'm in this town by chance." "What kind of chance? You get abducted by aliens and they drop you here at random?" "I hitched a ride with a guy. This happened to be his destination. I'm not staying here. I'm gonna grab some food, some coffee, then I'll be gone." "You were planning to stay just long enough to rip off a store, in other words?" "What?" Goodyear produced Reacher's toothbrush from his pocket and laid it on the table. "See, I was lying. I do know your deal. You stick this in your pocket and pretend it's a gun. People aren't gonna fall for it every time, sure, but plenty won't want to take the chance, am I right?" "You're an idiot." "I am?" Goodyear smiled. "Account for this, then." He placed Reacher's roll of money on the table next to his toothbrush. "You have an ATM card, but you didn't get these notes from any bank. They use fresh, crisp ones.
These would get stuck and gum up the machine. So, where'd you get them? I earned them. How? A new venture of mine. I recently dipped a toe in the music business. Goodyear leaned in and lowered his voice. A word to the wise, Reacher. This is the 21st century. Police departments have computers now, and those computers are all connected. I'm running your description across Tennessee and 9 surrounding states. The results will be in soon. Very soon. In minutes, maybe. The smart thing is to get out ahead of that. Tell me yourself right now, and I'll help with your statement. Wait until I have a stack of computer printouts to work with, and it'll be worse for you. Much worse. Who knows what other charges might come to light? Vagrancy wouldn't be a big surprise for one. I didn't see any lakes on my way into town, Reacher said. I guess that explains it. Explains what? Why you're trying to go fishing in here. You have no reason to suspect me of any crime. I travel light, so what? I have done for years, ever since I left the army. And so we're straight. You haven't contacted any other police departments. What makes you think so? If you had, you'd already have an answer. Let's face it, I'm a distinctive looking guy. There's no one else in Tennessee or anywhere else who matches my description. But that's beside the point, for 2 reasons. First, because I didn't hold anywhere up. And second, you couldn't contact any other departments, your systems are all down. Goodyear's smile faded. What do you know about our systems? What did Rutherford tell you?
Oh yeah. Oh.
The other guy you wrongly
You need
arrested?
one
None.
You need one that
I haven't
covers the
exchanged a
whole
word.
thing.
I didn't
Yeah,
need to.
so it can
I have
all
a system
press
of my
in.
own.
That's why I say the
What system?
Because it'll make your
Eyeball.
waist up and then you
You
got all of the
Series
factors up
1.
there.
I can't stand
Come on,
Just stay.
detective. It's obvious.
So it'll
Your
press
officer
it,
called
it'll
in my
push it.
arrest on his cell phone. The
So
terminal
it'll
in
be
his
shaky.
car was inoperative. The computers in the booking area were switched off. The security cameras aren't
Or to
working.
go back down.
And it's not just the police department. The traffic signals in town are out. Something weird's going on. What is it?
I think this
Goodyear
is hard,
shifted in
man.
his seat, but didn't respond. Okay, let's get the minor stuff and get to the heart of the matter.
I know
Why
it
would
keeps
someone
piling
want to
on.
kidnap Rutherford? He seemed like a pretty innocuous kind of guy. Who says anyone tried to kidnap him? I do.
Yeah.
What would you know about kidnapping?
Who the heck
Enough. I know
Right? I
an
don't know how
ambush
they
might
go
say
with that.
Rutherford doesn't.
That's
The guy needs
crazy.
protection. You should keep him in custody for his
I
own
just-
good
when
and call the
I noticed, I
FBI.
was like, then,
Kidnapping's their jurisdiction.
20 of it back.
It wouldn't create any extra work
within 1
for
week.
you.
I was like, this
Let's
is,
not
and I
get
mean,
ahead of
I only ate
ourselves.
like 4 times.
Goodyear's grin
And
was
20
pretty
pounds
bad.
came back. I said,
There's no need to send up the federal
yeah, it's like,
balloon just yet.
Jesus.
Maybe they'll
Like,
catch
you mean to
tangled
tell
with
me I
her
could
trying
eat
to
4
grab
days?
Rutherford.
Like
You a
anybody
mind
else, it'll
reader?
take them
You
forever
don't
to
know what
gain
they were
weight.
planning to do with him.
Me, I can
If
gain
they were
weight
trying to
just
grab
looking
him,
at the
and I'm
food.
not
It don't
saying
take
they
me
were
long.
because we don't
It
know.
don't take me long.
They
like,
probably just wanted to take him someplace private where they could have a full and
I
frank
be hearing
exchange
it
of
on
views.
the different people.
Maybe
they
even
go,
dole
"Oh,
out a
gain
good
weight."
old-fashioned ass kicking.
I'm like,
If I take my
it's not
detective
hard.
hat
Just
off,
eat all
I can't say
the
he
things
doesn't
you like to
deserve
eat.
one.
That's it.
Hell,
Yeah,
if it was
but I
no
guess they,
kickback, the
I
whole
think
town
because they
would be
move too
suspect.
much, or
I'd need a bigger jail
They have
house.
they
How
have
many
a-
times
You're
does
right.
it
have a-
I say no harm, no
or
foul.
they move too much.
So
Like,
why don't we
and
leave
maybe
it at
want to
that?
walk in, going to the
When I write a
mall, and
statement,
going,
you
like
give it
going to
the
see
feds.
friends, and
Do
then
your
me,
job.
I'm just shit that's
Protect
sitting
and serve, or
here.
whatever you
Yep.
say in this
So
state.
So it's good.
You
You
Yeah,
don't
it's
need
just like,
computers to do that.
so that's why I was like,
Why
I'm
don't
gonna
you
get that
keep your
job,
whacked out theories to yourself?
and I'll be standing for 6
Why are you so
hours.
desperate to sweep this under the rug?
So,
What has Rutherford done?
That'll help you too.
Why are
'Cause
you
I'm-
so
I'm-
desperate to keep it in
I'm
the
too
spotlight?
comfortable. I'm
Not the
comfortable
smartest move from your
working
point of
this
view,
job.
Reacher.
Too
Keep it
comfortable.
up, and I may have to take a closer look at your role.
And it's fun.
I hear you knocked one man out cold,
Mm-hmm.
threw another
It's
through
gonna
a
be
car
fun.
window. Assaults like
Yeah.
that, you could be looking at jail time. I didn't assault anyone. The sidewalk was slippery. That's all. The first guy slid into a wall.
I think the
The
one at
second tripped.
62nd.
He's lucky the car window was open, or he could have gotten a nasty bruise. All right, let's take a step back. You say these guys tried to kidnap Rutherford. Why would they do that? How would I know? No one will tell me what he's done. What's your connection to him? We don't have a
I wanna
connection.
give me my bigger pack.
Did he give you this cash?
Mm.
Goodyear gestured to the pile on the table.
What kind?
No. Did he hire you as a
I've
bodyguard?
been looking online. I've been
No.
seeing some fresh
I want
ass
some
Now they
all
don't
lime
tax.
green shoes.
He didn't.
Man, they
Like
got so
the-
many
Where did
The
you
nice-
first
lime
meet?
green, I want them so
We
bad.
never met.
There's so many
Not
nice
before
ass
today.
Jordans on
I
there.
saw him walking into
Right.
an ambush. I helped him
The
escape.
retro
It was a
fives and
spur of the
shit.
moment thing.
I gotta get my
You're
own
just a
shoe
good
game.
Samaritan.
I just gave all my
Exactly.
shoes to
Where did
this
Rutherford
lady
go
to get
before
her
the coffee
son.
shop?
For real?
The moon.
I do
He has
that
a
every
secret
time I
love
pile
nest
up.
there. I was thinking
Every
of
time I
renting
pile
it,
up
but the
shoes, I
nerves
do
on the
that.
ceiling are too small. I advise you to take this process seriously, Mr. Reacher. Why? You're not. Goodyear didn't answer.
Mhm. Gotta give back.
If you want me to get serious, give me some paper. I'll write a statement for the FBI. I'm not giving you any paper. Then give me a ride to the highway. I'm a detective. I don't give rides. And unless you're charging me with holding up an
No.
imaginary
I'll
store,
only- I'll
it
let it
sounds
stack
like our
up
business
just-
here is done.
Like if I
Or
got
I could bring in a
5,
lawyer.
10, 15,
There's
20.
no need for a
When I
lawyer.
get to 20,
Goodyear
then I'll
paused.
own like to give it away and start over.
All right, you can go.
Start over.
But take my advice. Don't stick
Can't
around.
get 'em, yeah.
Leave town
So
right
I like
away.
because you know
And
Jordan
here's
come
the
out
most
so
important
often
thing.
that after
Have nothing
you
more
got
to do
20,
with Rusty
you
Rutherford.
can't wear that number 1 again.
And then it recycles back
Yeah,
around.
it's like I ain't about to
Chapter
wear them
4.
number 1s. I'm gonna wear some new
Goodyear
ones.
escorted Reacher back to the booking area, set his cash and toothbrush down on the table, and went to his office. He needed privacy to
So
make the
hard to
call.
choose.
The other cop added Reacher's passport and ATM card like a poker player calling a bet, then followed up with a form and a pen. Reacher signed, stowed his possessions in his pockets, and shook his head when the cop tried to steer him towards the rear exit. He took the public stairs instead and hurried past the bank of framed portraits hanging in the echoey marble foyer. He pushed through the central door in a row of 3, skirted a roughly boxed-in temporary structure where an access ramp was being constructed, and turned to head back to the main street. He wasn't about to hit the road without his coffee. Priorities were priorities. He started across the lawn, and as he drew level with the parking lot, he heard a voice calling to him. It was Rutherford. He'd been waiting by the metal door, but now he was scampering forward with one arm raised. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Please, wait. Reacher slowed and allowed Rutherford to catch up. My name's Rusty Rutherford. He held out his hand. Jack Reacher. Mr. Reacher, would it be okay if we talk for a moment? If we talk while we walk, there's somewhere I need to be. Please. Rutherford was out of breath, and he was becoming flustered. Just stop. Just for a moment. I can make this quick. Reacher stopped. 2 things. First, thank you. I guess you saved my ass back there. My pleasure. And second, I need to ask you something. Am I in danger? The detective kept talking about a carjacking, but that's not what happened. I had some time to think in the cell before they questioned me. What happened wasn't random. It was planned. Those guys were waiting. At first I thought they must have been there for you. Nothing like this has ever happened to me before. But then I remembered. One of the men tried to grab me before you intervened. He tried to push me into the car. The detective said I was confused, that I was wrong. But I'm not, am I? I just want to know what's going on. I have no idea what's going on, Reacher said. This isn't my town. I don't know you. I don't know what you may have done to upset people. I don't know what you have that's valuable. But something strange is happening here, that's for sure. So what should I do? That's your call. My philosophy is hope for the best but prepare for the worst. So given the circumstances, I'd say the smart thing would be to leave town. Let whatever's going on blow over on its own. Come back when things have settled down. Leave town? Rutherford's eyes stretched wide. No, I can't do that. Why not? It would make me look guilty. Of what? That's a long story. Reacher thought for a moment. It was already late afternoon. He was hungry. He needed to eat, whether there or somewhere else. It would be harder to hitch a ride in the dark. There'd be less to see from the road. And he was intrigued to find out why a mousy little guy in a coffee-stained shirt thought not looking guilty was more important than his own safety. Anywhere around here sell good burgers? We could grab a bite and you could tell me about it. You said you had somewhere to be? I do. But I can wait a while to get there. No need to be inflexible. I hear it's bad for your health. At the same time Reacher was talking to Rutherford, two people were trying to call Speransky. One on a burner cell, one on a secure phone he'd used earlier. Neither call got through. Not right away. The signal was blocked. Because Speransky had gone down to the generator room. Just for a couple of minutes. He wanted to see the place one last time before his housekeeper cleaned it up. That couldn't wait much longer, he knew. Some of the blood was already more than 2 weeks old. The subject had held out a long time. She had yielded some critical information. She'd told him about Rutherford, what was in his possession, which was gold, professionally, and personally, she'd made him feel young again. He didn't get to do much wet work these days. He missed it. He looked at the dark pools on the floor. The droplets sprayed up the walls. The manacles. The tools lined up on the stainless steel trolley. The cleaner patches where the suitcases had been. He relived his favorite moments and smiled. Normally, he didn't know when his next opportunity would arise or who it would be with. But this time, he knew both. It would be very soon. And it would be with the traitor. As soon as she was no longer useful. The first phone to ring when he got back to ground level was the burner. It was a short call from a guy a short distance away. A report. First, facts, then opinions. Brief and concise, the way Speransky liked it. Which meant that when the secure phone rang a few moments later, Speransky already knew what the guy at the end of the line was going to say. Rutherford got away. Okay, Speransky replied, so we try again.
We may not. The center is concerned. The failed attempt caused a spectacle, and Rutherford had help. We don't know who from or what size of force is involved. Trying again might draw more attention. It could be counterproductive.
So the center is proposing we do what? Nothing?
The final decision has not yet been made. Watch and wait is the current stance. See if the item surfaces on its own. And if it does, see if it's actually dangerous.
Speransky took the phone away from his ear and fought the urge to smash it into a million pieces. This was the worst part of working in the field, having to deal with spineless cretins who hid behind their desks all day, who never put their own necks on the line and then gambled with the lives of the people who did, and then were too timid to take a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to turn the tables on the enemy, even when it was handed to them on a plate. He lifted the phone to his ear
You know
again.
where I do want to go though?
Yeah.
Oh, my
Back
Lord,
to
been
them.
honest.
Right now.
Ooh,
Convince
been
them
honest. I
that
ain't
watching
been
and
there
waiting
in a
is
long
not an option.
Watch
The
them
item
cook.
they never
Yeah,
served.
Mhm.
That's
it's
true.
so fresh.
I want to go to that one where you cook your own food.
That's also.
You seen that?
But neither of those
It's a
things
place
matter.
where they
If
give
the
you a
FBI
hot
doesn't find it here, what will they
I
do?
think it's a
Give up?
coal or
No, they'll keep on hunting at the source.
or a
until
rock
they're
or
successful,
something on
which
fire,
could
and
be
you
before
cook
the
your
mission
own
is
food.
complete.
That might
They
be
give you the
Which
raw
would be fantastic.
food, and you just take the
And the
thing and you
physical
cook it,
afterwards
turn
would
it,
be
and
the end of
That's
everything.
That's probably
the
neat.
engagement.
yeah, that's
I
fun.
want to do
Which
that.
obviously I would
You
never
cook
allow
your
to happen.
own food. I'm gonna have to ask
I
my
understand,
customer
and I agree.
see if she
But the center is
cooks
worried
on
about
she
exposure,
went.
about attracting
There's
attention,
so much stuff
tipping
here
our
in
hand.
Miami.
It's so much.
Yeah,
It
they're
really.
dangerous.
That's why I like being.
The
That's why I like being
interference was
in Miami. You get what I'm saying? Like I
Some
don't.
kind of
I don't want to be an
ex-military
hour away.
situation
I live
Like
where-
it's like if I never go, at least if I just
I'm
get the
here.
urge
I'm
to go,
here.
I can go.
That's how I feel.
That's how I like
I
it.
live where
For
people
50 years,
vacation.
I have
Yeah.
contacts.
That's why I like it here. They be like, why you like?
I said I was gonna
Because
start
when I
taking
want to
advantage.
want some fun, I know it's always gonna be something to do.
But
Yeah.
what if the jerk
It
doesn't
is.
leave town?
You can eat on the
I'll
water.
take local action.
Or you could just drive down to South Beach, just and
Exactly
window
like
look.
that.
You know what I'm saying? Like say it's
Right.
2:00 in the morning,
I'll talk to
you
them.
can go to the beach and
Try to
take
get
a
them to
walk.
start surveillance up
You know what I'm
again.
saying? The stores is closed. There's
That's
not that many
enough.
people on the
We
street.
have to take Rutherford, and fast.
Yeah.
They don't
It's fun.
understand what
And
it
there's
takes to whip up
always
the
on
hysteria.
something going on
I
down
used
there.
everything. Local press,
You can
whisper
grab a drink, I know
campaigns,
that.
a whole
Yeah,
army
you
of
can
bots on
grab a
social media.
drink.
It's holding for now, but it can't last. The bubble will burst. Something else will happen and take the spotlight. Rutherford needs to disappear while everyone in town still hates him.
Rutherford led the way to his favorite diner. It was on the ground floor of an office building on the main street, 3 blocks from the coffee shop. Reacher wasn't encouraged by the exterior, but he had to admit that the designer had done a credible job with the inside. The color scheme was pure 50s with plenty of chrome, and the booths along both sides of the room all had their own mini jukebox. There was an old-fashioned payphone on the back wall, and a line of Formica-covered four-tops down the center. The side walls were covered with fine paintings of cars. They were all convertibles, Cadillacs and Chevys, turquoise and pink, speeding down scenic highways or parked by snow-topped mountains and sparkling lakes with happy nuclear families spilling out with picnic sets and footballs.
Right.
There were no other customers in the place, so they helped themselves to a booth midway along the right-hand wall. It was below a turquoise Chevrolet, where Reacher could keep an eye on the doors to the street and the kitchen. A moment later, a waitress emerged. She smiled at Reacher as she approached, but her expression cooled when she saw who his dining companion was. Reacher ordered 2 cheeseburgers and coffee. Rutherford ordered 1, then they sat in silence until the waitress delivered their mugs. "Did you see the way she looked at me?" Rutherford pushed his mug away. "I've made myself unpopular in certain circles from time to time," Reacher said. "But to have a whole town mad at you, that's quite an achievement. What did you do?" "Nothing." "Okay." Reacher took a swig of coffee. "What didn't you do?" "Well, I guess my big sin is that I didn't do enough to avoid catching a blame for the mess the town's in." Reacher's mind jumped to the traffic signals and the police computers. "Are you the town treasurer? Some kind of municipal accountant?" "No." Rutherford rocked back on his bench. "Why would you think I was?" "Nothing in the town is working. Usually that's because bills haven't been paid." Rutherford smiled for the first time since Reacher had met him. "If only that was a problem. That could easily be fixed. The town situation is much worse. It is kind of connected to money, though. We've been hit by a ransomware attack." "I have no idea what that is." "Ransomware? It's a malicious program that locks up a computer network. The computers themselves and the data they use. All the records and information from all the different departments. And all the phones and laptops and tablets if they're connected." "Okay. So how do you get it all unlocked and working again?" "You have to buy a key." "From where?" "From whoever attacked you." "For real?" "Oh, yes. More and more towns are getting hit. Sometimes several at once if they share services." "What does this town share?" "Nothing. We do everything for ourselves." "So you were targeted specifically. Why?" "No special reason. We just made it too easy. Our infrastructure is a hacker's wet dream. A hodgepodge of old out-of-date systems, vulnerabilities all over the place. No viable defense. And you have to understand, this is a growing phenomenon. Cities are getting hit. Hospitals, police departments, corporations too. But they usually try to hide it and pay up quietly." "Corporations pay?" "Sometimes. Most times, I don't really know." "Doesn't paying up encourage more attacks?" "Probably." Rutherford shrugged. "But what choice do they have?" "The town's not going to pay, is it?" Rutherford didn't answer. "Seems to me that this kind of thing needs to be stamped out," Reacher said, "not encouraged. It's one thing to make them think you're going to pay, set up an exchange, the cash for the key, but the assholes who attacked you shouldn't walk away with a cent. They shouldn't walk away at all. You should check that the key works, then find their base and burn it down. Identify everyone involved and burn down their houses. Send them a message not to try it again." "I kind of wish we could," Rutherford said, "but that's not how it works." "Why not?" "We're not talking about cases stuffed full of banknotes. No physical cash is involved. It's always virtual currency that these people want. Bitcoin, usually. There's not a physical key either, just more computer code. It's delivered remotely via the internet from an address that's so scrambled it's impossible to find out who sent it. Sometimes it's from somewhere in the U.S. Usually it's Russia or Iran or someplace like that." "Could you break the code?"
In theory, there are specialist companies you can hire. I have a friend who founded one, actually. She was an FBI agent, a cybercrimes expert. But all those companies are expensive, and there's no guarantee they'll succeed. Even if they do, there's the issue of time. How long can you afford to be without your critical infrastructure? And some ransomware has a built-in time limit. If you don't pay up within X days or weeks or whatever, your data gets permanently whacked. A waitress appeared with a coffee pot and top Preacher's mug. She was a different woman, younger, a little taller, and much friendlier. She smiled at Rutherford rather than scowling at him, then turned to Reacher and tipped her head to the side.
Do I know you from somewhere?
Unlikely. I just arrived in town today.
Of course. I knew I recognized you. That's why. I saw you getting out of a car just across the street. An Impala, right? Silver? Smart-looking man driving it? A banker, maybe?
Insurance.
See? I wasn't far off. Is that interesting work, insurance?
Why are you asking me?
Isn't that man your boss?
I don't have a boss.
So you're independent?
That's the general idea.
That must be nice. Anyway, your burgers will be out soon. Holler if you need anything in the meantime.
Rutherford waited until the waitress was back in the kitchen. But anyway, ransomware. If you don't pay to get the key, you have two choices. Start again from scratch, which is slow and super expensive. Rutherford hesitated. Or wipe everything off all your computers and load a clean copy from your backup. Option B sounds good. Why doesn't the town do that?
They'd need two things. A backup with a clean copy of all the data, and an IT manager to reinstall it.
The town doesn't have an IT manager?
Not anymore. I was it. They fired me.
Because you didn't make a clean backup?
Kinda. Only it's a bit more complicated than that. I told my bosses time after time that we needed a system to protect us against an attack and a backup, just in case. The town was such a soft target. But fixing it was expensive. They wouldn't do it. I should have walked many times over. But I liked the town. I liked it anyway.
So you let the defense and the backup slide, and that came back and bit you on the ass?
No.
Rutherford closed his eyes for a moment.
I did something even more stupid.
25 minutes had passed, and Natasha's phone did not ring. The motel was a single structure, long and low, clad with brown wood. It was divided into 19 sections. An office at the east end with a covered entrance and an alcove for ice and soft drinks. Then 18 guest rooms, each with a door and a window, starting with room 1 next to the office and stretching away to the west. Natasha's team had taken rooms 15 through 18. They left 15 vacant as a buffer in case of adjacent occupants and thin walls. Vasily and Anatole from the Suburban slept in 16, Ilya and Petya in 17, and Natasha and Sonia in 18. When they got back from swapping cars, the two women had carried Ilya to their own room and laid him unconscious on the couch. Petya had followed them in, nursing his arm. A moment later, the other two men had joined them. To wait. 30 minutes passed. Natasha's phone did not ring. She checked its signal 3 times. 3 times, she found it was at full strength. Some kind of proverb probably applied, she thought. Watched pots, something like that. Or maybe something more up to date.
Right.
She pushed the thought aside and tried to focus on practical matters, like Petya's shoulder. At first, he was reluctant to let her examine it, but he eventually relented. She found it was dislocated and eased it back into place. Then she checked on Ilya and found his breathing and pulse were returning to normal. 35 minutes passed. Her phone didn't ring. Should we do something? Vasily asked.
Yes.
Natasha said.
Wait.
For how long?
For as long as it takes.
But why is it taking so long? Something must be wrong.
Nothing's wrong.
How can you be so certain? What other explanation is there? Vasily lowered his voice.
We screwed up.
We all know what happens when you screw up. We've all heard the rumors.
Cut that kind of talk out right now. You shouldn't listen to rumors.
And why is it taking so long for them to decide what they want us to do?
What if they have decided?
Sonia looked up from the table.
Decided but not told us.
Why wouldn't they tell us? Vasily said. How can we act on our orders if they're not given to
You know how
us?
you usually do my neck? You can
What
do it
if
just
it's
like
not
they
us
got
they're
their
giving
girls.
orders to?
Sonia said.
Oh, laying
What
across
if
the
they
neck.
brought in another team
Yeah, you can do it
and
just
don't
how
want
you
any
do.
loose ends?
Okay.
Stop it, Natasha said. You're being paranoid,
Are we?
Sonia said.
Think about it. They know where we are. They know we're all together. We're making it easy for them.
Ilya grunted from the couch and opened his eyes. Vasily crossed to the window. All clear, for now. 40 minutes passed. Natasha's phone finally rang. Reacher bit into his first burger. So, what did you do that was so stupid? Rutherford shook his head.
I tried to fix it myself. I was working on a system to detect and neutralize cyber attacks. I called it the Guard Dog. That friend I mentioned, the FBI agent, she was helping me. She wanted to call it Cerberus. If it worked, we were going into business together. We were going to industrialize it and make our fortunes.
I'm guessing your system didn't work.
Nope, and neither did the backup I tried to build. And yet I get the blame, which is so unfair. None of these bozos who are on my back have any idea what I was up against. A lot of these attacks are state-sponsored. They have giant warehouses full of people. It's their only job. They have endless resources. Then there's me, on my own, cobbling together repurposed parts salvaged from wherever I can find them.
Like David and Goliath, only Goliath won.
Right. Which was always the more likely outcome, if you think about it.
But however likely or unlikely it was, you still have no job, and everyone hates you. The town is nice, sure, but there's a whole world out there. Why not hit the road for a while?
I might do that, eventually. But first I need to clear my name.
How?
There are documents on my old laptop that prove I'm innocent. I've hired a lawyer, and she subpoenaed the town to get it. I can show how I warned my boss, and how he ignored me. And there's something else. The asshole is spreading a rumor that it was me who infected the network. He's saying I missed a virus guard update when I was traveling, and then opened a contaminated email.
Rutherford rolled his eyes.
Can you believe it? It was me who introduced the update policy in the first place. I bet it was him who missed one. When I get my laptop back, I'll prove it.
Rusty, I admire your spirit, but are you sure this is the best path to take? It'd be a hollow victory if you can't enjoy it because you've been bundled into the back of some other thug's car.
That detective was clear he didn't think it was a serious kidnapping attempt. How could it be real? What would be the point? I'm not red. I have no famous relatives. I don't know any secrets. I haven't slept with anyone's wife.
Well, someone sent those guys after you. And it wasn't someone wanting to invite you over for milk and cookies.
I've been thinking about that. I didn't recognize any of them, so they wouldn't recognize me. It could have been a case of mistaken identity.
There are these new things. They're called photographs. I've been told that even cell phones can take them now.
Point taken. But hiring a bunch of thugs to drag me somewhere and kick my ass? Why do that? It's a lot of trouble. A lot of expense, probably. And even if everyone in town believes the attack is my fault, who really got hurt? It's all hysteria. The papers, social media, people are talking nonsense. Saying the town schools are going to close. There'll be no new swings in the park. Half the police department's cars will have to be scrapped. Gas prices will double. House prices will crash. It's all a load of crap. Some of the town's employees are having to work longer hours, sure, and use their own phones. But who doesn't have unlimited minutes these days? The online historical archive is delayed, so the town will lose a little face, but we're not
They
alone.
did?
Lots of towns have been disrupted recently. It's not worth committing crimes over. As long as the systems are back up and running by the end of the month for payroll, it's no biggie, despite the hype.
How long have the computers been down?
2 weeks?
There's a week left till the end of the month. The town has no backup. You said it takes time to start from scratch and there's no IT manager.
Sounds like a biggie to me.
But the town's not starting from scratch. We're paying. Didn't I tell you that? The deal must be almost done.
If someone's paying, someone's gonna be left with a hole in their bank account. They might not be happy about that. Rutherford shook his head.
The insurance company is paying. They've got a guy negotiating, trying to get the price down. Maybe the guy you rode in with. Even if he can't get them to budge and they have to pay full sticker. I don't see a major corporation going after a pound of my flesh.
The friendly waitress collected their plates. Reacher took a sip of coffee. You said you were working on some kind of new system to detect these attacks and stop them. It was defeated, I get that. But is there any way it could still help? Think about someone wearing body armor. It's supposed to be impermeable, but he gets shot by some new kind of round that is able to penetrate. It sucks for him because he's dead, but the forensic guys can still learn a lot. The caliber of the bullet, was it jacketed, what kind of material, and so on. Then some deductions can be made.
I was thinking the same way. That was exactly what I was hoping for. I checked multiple times. No luck. And I sent a copy to my ex-FBI friend. She's working on it too. She has more resources, but it doesn't look hopeful.
Reacher put some money down and slid out of the booth. The friendly waitress slipped her phone into her apron pocket and approached. She asked to talk to Rutherford for a moment. It was something she needed help with. Her voice said it had to do with a computer. Her body language said it had to do with something else. Reacher smiled. He found people respond to crises in two ways. Some get to work fixing the problem, others proving the problem wasn't their fault. Reacher liked the first kind. Rutherford seemed like the first kind. It was nice to see someone not dumping on him for a change. Reacher stepped outside. He moved to the side of the window to give Rutherford some privacy. A man stepped out of the shadows. He was around 6 feet even. He had sunken eyes set into a pale, unshaven face, shabby work boots with torn leather exposing their steel toe caps, grubby jeans, a tight black t-shirt under an olive jacket. Army surplus, Reacher thought. Probably Italian by the shade of green. The man's hand slid into his jacket pocket and directed something hard and cylindrical toward Reacher's chest.
Move it, he said. Into the alley.
I gotta go to Fort Lauderdale in the morning one more time.
Uh-oh.
I think
Chapter
it's the
5.
last day.
And then you'll be
Speransky
done.
was back in his
Yeah.
living room reading his newspaper when the secure phone rang again.
This is for
Good
My
news.
favorite state
The
too.
voice at the other
So
end
she
of the
goes to
line
school
said,
online.
The center agreed.
Oh, okay.
The team
So,
was
you know,
sent
they
back
have
out,
to
and
be
right
somewhere
away they
outside.
reestablished contact.
Because the regular
Excellent.
children do it in
Speransky
school.
said, where?
Went into a diner, opposite Rutherford
She do
Building.
homeschooling?
Yeah, well,
They
yeah,
take
her
him
school
there?
online,
What's the
Connections
plan?
Academy.
Oh, okay.
That's inside.
2019.
They're going to wait.
What?
Take them when they come out.
Then,
Yeah, it was convenient when I was homeless.
Rutherford and
Yeah.
Drift.
It was convenient.
Speransky was silent for a moment. Had his contact in the police
But the
department
school ain't
lied
like
to
it
him,
used to be.
or failed to carry
Yeah,
out the
something
adequate
going on.
interview?
It's totally different now.
They showed
I
up
don't even know how they
The
even
voice said,
graduating or
from
doing
the
anything.
direction of the courthouse.
They just letting
They
them
were
go.
getting to know
Yeah,
Rutherford
I
according to
Like,
the-
oh well,
Probably got released.
it's better they
sometime
be
and started
dumb.
talking.
Yeah.
so then we
That
don't have to
sounded like
worry
an
about it.
assumption, Speransky.
Something going on.
It's not
Even
business
like
going on.
Something going
It's not
on
like
that's
it
just
used to be
crazy.
when we
It was
was in
time to
school.
tell
I don't know what the
No.
hell going on. It's just like a
Different.
damn romper room. It's just like, oh well.
The children's like they grown.
Yeah, early.
But
Yeah, it's something going on.
the
and I
current
don't know.
situation had to be
Maybe they
resolved
trying to
first.
keep them dumb so they'll just have
If it wasn't,
kids
nothing else would
and
No.
don't
matter
do
anyway.
anything.
No,
So they'll
man.
take them on the
There's a lot
street,
of people got their
Speransky
children at
said.
home school.
Wow.
And then alley.
And they
The
just
voice said,
graduating them.
There's one right next
Yeah,
to
they
the diner.
graduate. She gonna be in there.
You
She
probably
12th
know.
grade.
They'll lure
You
them
go
in,
from K,
block the
you go
entrance with the Suburban
from
to avoid any
K
witnesses,
to
and hit them with the
12th grade.
tasers.
Wow.
Actions Academy.
Speransky did know the alley.
Mhm.
He pictured the
I
scene.
lasted all kind of shit.
It was suitable, he
I
decided.
go in there, check her work
The
off,
plan was simple,
check her
but
hours off.
sometimes simple is best.
Now it's time to read.
And if they got the drifter as well as Rutherford, that could be
Get
advantageous,
her shots.
because he
and send
couldn't
her
touch
paper.
Rutherford.
So you, oh, they want them to have the shots at home.
Nothing
Yes,
even though you
we're
at
at
home.
suspicion
That's
of
where
an
it's school.
autopsy. He had to
Wow.
rely on
School, I had
scaring,
transfer, when I transferred
But he
her,
could do
I
whatever
transferred
he
her
wanted
papers from
with
school
the
and
drifter.
everything.
which would no
Yeah,
doubt
they-
help to
that's
loosen
school.
Rutherford's
Yeah,
tongue.
just home.
And it would be fun.
Yep.
'Cause I thought they got
Some
the
of his
shots to
housekeeper
protect the
tell her to prepare
kid
the
to
generator
kid.
room.
They want that shit because it's just like it's
The
real
walls
school.
and floor could
I want to
probably
keep
wait.
the atmosphere of it.
Reacher looked at the
I
man
think
facing
that's
him
what
with the
it is.
bulging jacket
So I'll
and
go
said
to her
nothing.
get her little last
Into
shot.
the alley.
The guy pointed with his free hand. Move.
Get some time
Backward.
in.
Now. I'll tell you when to
I
turn.
gotta do that any day now.
What's the rush? Reacher said. This is a serious decision. I'm gonna need more information. Let's start with you explaining why I'd want to go into the alley.
Because I'm telling you to.
Reacher shook his head. See, that is not a compelling reason. In fact, it's the opposite. A moment ago, before you opened your mouth, there was a possibility I'd wind up in there, based purely on random chance. It wouldn't have been very likely. If a top mathematician happened to be passing by, she could have calculated the probability, tiny though it might have been. Now, on the other hand, even if you invented a whole new branch of mathematics, you wouldn't be able to come up with a number small enough. The man fidgeted from foot to foot.
Okay, do the math on this. Go into the alley right now or I'll shoot you.
Again, not compelling. If you want me in the alley, you must have a reason which doesn't involve shooting me on the street, or you would have done that already. And on top of that, in order to shoot me, you'd need to have a gun.
I have a gun.
The guy flapped his jacket.
I'm pointing it right at you.
That's a gun in your pocket? Oh, okay. I didn't realize. What kind is it? The guy's mouth opened, but no words came out. Pistol or revolver? The guy didn't answer. 38 or 45? The guy stayed silent. Take it out. Show it to me. You might learn something. The guy didn't move. You don't have a gun. It's okay. You can admit it. But you do realize that the game's over. Because here's your real problem. You already know you can't make me do anything on your own. That's why you pretended to be armed. Only you're not armed. So here's my decision. I'm going to decline your invitation and give you a choice. Tell me who sent you and why they want me in the alley, and I'll let you walk away. Otherwise, do you have a phone? The guy didn't answer. If you do have one, and you choose not to tell me what I want to know, you should take it out. Call 911 right away. Because I'm going to throw you through that window. You don't want to run the risk of bleeding out on the floor. No one's calling 911. It was a man's voice from somewhere behind Reacher's back.
And if anyone's getting thrown through a window, it'll be you.
A second voice. Reacher turned and saw two men strutting out of the alley. Both were also around 6 feet tall. Both were bald with full bushy beards. They were wearing greasy coveralls and were broad with pickles-like arms curving out in front of them. Reacher pictured them in a truck workshop carrying giant tires around all day. You see, this is why I don't like alleys, Reacher said. They attract rats. Are there any more in there? If so, they better slink out now. Because I don't know what you have in mind, but whatever it is, 2 tubs of lard aren't gonna get it done.
There are 3 of us.
The original guy now had his hand out of his pocket, and he punched it into a fist. Reacher grabbed him by his ear, spun him around, and launched him forward so that he bounced off the other guy's bellies and landed at their feet. You're not quite the same weight class, but stay where I can see you all the same. Reacher waited for the heavier man to help him up. They got him vertical and then closed in tight on either side. A subconscious urge to defend the weakest in the group, or stupidity. Reacher didn't know. But whatever the reason, it was a poor position to adopt. They should have spread out, formed a triangle, multiplied the threat they posed, put the bigger guys on the outside corners, have them advance together, attack simultaneously. Then even if Reacher successfully blocked them both, he temporarily the opposite. The skinny guy was free, front and center, stood a chance to be a hero. I assume there was some kind of message you were planning to deliver, Reacher said. Want to tell me what it was? The broad guy swapped glances, then the one who'd been the first to emerge from the alley took a step forward.
We know what you're doing, he said. Stop it. Go home and take your boss with you.
My boss being?
The man you came here with. Okay. Now we have a real problem. You know why? If you think that guy's my boss, you must think I'm here to work. If I'm here to work, I'm getting paid. If I stop working and leave, I won't get paid. I'll lose out. So it's like you're trying to take money out of my pocket. You know what happens to people who try to do that? The guy glanced at his buddy, but didn't answer. The details vary, but the outcome is always the same. A long stay in the hospital. But this is your lucky day. I'm going to give you a chance to forego the usual penalties. Tell me who sent you, and I'll call it even. Can't do that. Are you trying to annoy me? Reacher said. I really dislike the imprecise use of language. You mean you won't tell me? Obviously you can. In fact, you will. You just need the necessary encouragement. Reacher grabbed the skinny guy and pulled him forward, changed their geometry, cut their options. Try again, Reacher said. Tell me who sent you. None of the men replied. Reacher twisted the skinny guy's hand so that his inner arm was facing up, then gripped him by the wrist. You know when people say a kid has a broken arm, the bone is often not severed all the way? It's what's called a green stick fracture. The bone's just bent. Because young people are soft. But as you grow older, the bones become more brittle. They no longer bend. They shatter. Now this guy's no kid. He's not old either. I wonder how far his bones will go before they snap. Reacher started to bend. The guy started to scream. More in anticipation than pain, Reacher thought, given the limited amount of force he was using. He kept an eye on the broad guy's position. They were running out of time. Their best option now would be for the skinny guy to drop to the ground, and the other two rush simultaneously and push Reacher back against the wall, pinning his arms. And if they were lucky, snagging his legs. He didn't move. Reacher bent the arm further. The guy screamed louder and rose up onto his tiptoes. Even if he could no longer drop, the other two should still charge. They'd end up in more of a tangle, and their guy might get a little squashed, but it was still their best bet. He didn't move. Reacher bent the arm further. The guy screamed louder. He rose up higher on his tiptoes. The guy on Reacher's right moved forward, slowly and alone. Reacher shifted his right hand to grip the skinny guy's neck and rotated so that his head tracked the bigger guy's movement. He waited until the two guys' heads were inches apart, twisted so that their temples were parallel, then drove his left fist hard into the side of the skinny guy's skull, using it like a cue ball to sink the bigger guy. Reacher let go, and the pair slumped down in a tangled heap of limbs. He spun back, his elbow raised in case the other guy was following in. But he hadn't moved. He was standing still, mouth open and broad ape arms curving uselessly out in front. It's just you and me now, Reacher said. What should we talk about? The guy didn't answer.
Really quick on the
How about
screen
this?
share.
Answer my question about who sent you, and you can take your friends to the hospital. Otherwise, you'll be joining them there. It's your choice. The man stepped back as if retreating, but he planted his rear foot way too deliberately. He paused, then sprang forward, arms wide, trying to catch Reacher in a bear hug. It would have been a reasonable move if he'd disguised it more effectively. As it was, Reacher chopped him on both sides of the neck, then grabbed the front of his coveralls, pivoted, and launched him into the wall. The man's eyes glazed over, and all the breath was knocked out of him. Reacher jabbed him in the solar plexus, but gently. He wanted to put the guy down, but not knock him out. Not until he revealed a name, anyway. The man folded forward, his legs buckled, and he wound up sitting at Reacher's feet. But before he could speak again, Reacher heard a siren. Moments later, the street was pulsing with red and blue light. Stop! Hands where I can see them! The voice was distorted by the loudspeaker, but Reacher recognized it all the same. And this time, you are getting down on the sidewalk. Chapter 6.
The same time Reacher was getting processed at the courthouse, Speransky was back down in the generator room, partly to check on progress, and partly because he was excited at the prospect of a busy night. Maybe many busy nights, if the Drifter proved as resilient as the journalist had been. While he was underground, 2 calls tried to get through to him, from the same 2 people as before. One on his burner cell, one on the secure phone. Only this time, when he got back to ground level, it was the secure phone that rang first. "Is it done?" Speransky asked.
That's a negative,
The voice said.
the team had to abort.
Speransky resisted the urge to smash the phone. "Why? What got screwed up this time?"
Nothing got screwed up. It was the correct decision. The Drifter left the diner ahead of Rutherford. He made like he was going to stick around, so the team held position, waiting for either Rutherford to catch up or the Drifter to move away. Then a wild card got played. The Drifter got in a fight. It came out of nothing, right there on the sidewalk. There was no way anyone could have anticipated it.
Okay, so who did he fight?
3 men. 2 big, 1 scrawny. Locals, presumably. No one we've seen before.
How badly was he hurt? Is he in the hospital?
No, he wasn't hurt. He won. Easily. He demolished all 3 guys. But just as the fight was winding up, a police car responded. They arrested him on the spot.
And Rutherford? Did he get hurt?
No, he didn't get involved. He avoided the whole thing. He stayed in the diner until the last one went down. Then he must have sneaked out through a back door into the alley. He was seen crossing the street and running into his building.
See. Why was action not taken?
Police were still there. The team had to let him pass. There was no alternative.
So where's Rutherford now?
Still in his building. I don't imagine he'll come out anytime soon.
Speransky took a moment to think. So it was only the Drifter and the police who were involved, not any of our people.
Correct.
The voice said. No attention drawn, no spectacle, nothing for the center to get no wad about?
Nothing.
Good. Where's the team now?
Watching Rutherford's building.
Excellent. You know, this may work in our favor. It will be easier to deal with them separately. We know their exact locations, and the Drifter will be secure until the morning at least. Okay, here's what I propose. Leave 2 people to watch Rutherford's building. The remainder of the team should rest. If Rutherford has not appeared by 6 a.m., they should go to a location I will confirm in due course. They should conceal themselves there and wait. The Drifter will be delivered to them. I'll make the arrangements for that myself. They should subdue him using any means necessary and bring him here. Then the whole team can focus on Rutherford. With the Drifter out of the way, they shouldn't have any further problems.
Yep.
The next call came through on the burner. It was short, from a man a short distance away. Report. First, facts, then opinions. Brief and concise, the way Speransky liked it. Only this time, Speransky followed up the information he received with a set of instructions, which meant that when the burner phone rang again a few moments later, Speransky already knew what the caller was going to say.
This is Marty.
I have something you may be interested in. There were 4 cells in the basement of the courthouse, and no occupants that night aside from Reacher. He didn't know if that kind of ratio was normal. Maybe the crime rate in the town was low. Maybe the police were bad at catching criminals. Or maybe the current situation gave the cops an incentive to avoid filling in forms and filing reports by hand. But whatever the reason, Reacher was happy with the result. He needed a place to sleep, and here was a solution that didn't require him to part with any cash. He took off his jacket and rolled it up to make a pillow, lay down on the metal bench, closed his eyes, and let Howlin' Wolf loose in his head. Next up was Magic Slim. He gave them a couple of songs each, then he counted to 3 and drifted straight off. Reacher woke himself at 7 a.m., so he'd been lying awake for an hour weighing his priorities for the day when he heard footsteps approaching. Someone quick and light. Reacher opened his eyes and saw a uniformed cop he didn't recognize. She was about 5'8" and looked like she could run a marathon before breakfast without thinking twice. She had a thick twist of dark shiny hair knotted at the back of her head and a warm, welcoming smile. Her nameplate said Rule. Reacher could only imagine the ribbing Nat had bought her at the academy.
Rise and shine.
Officer Rule opened the cell door and gestured for Reacher to come out.
A detective wants to see you.
Goodyear? Reacher didn't move.
Someone new.
Officer Rule shrugged.
I don't know who he is. He just got here. Must be from another jurisdiction.
Suppose I go see him. Reacher stood up. What then?
That's up to him. And Detective Goodyear.
Any word on the idiots who jumped me?
The new detective should have the most up-to-date information.
Any idea why they did it?
You already said it.
Officer Rule smiled.
They're idiots.
Who are they?
Just a bunch of local yahoos. No one for you to worry about.
Officer Rule paused and looked more closely at Reacher.
Although I'm guessing there aren't too many people you worry about.
That's not so. Reacher picked up his jacket and came out of the cell. Just the other day, I got into a debate over the well-being of a group of up-and-coming musicians.
That's not what I meant.
Officer Rule took Reacher's elbow and guided him towards the corridor.
And I think you know it.
The new detective kept Reacher waiting for half an hour exactly. A minute more than one prime number, a minute short of another. Reacher was disappointed. The guy was wearing a black suit with a white shirt and a narrow burgundy tie. He was older than Goodyear. That was clear. But how much older was hard to tell. Reacher guessed 10 years minimum, but the guy had the kind of podgy face that resisted wrinkles and didn't sag. His head was bald, but freshly shaved, so there was no indication of where his hairline would naturally be. He was slim, and he looked fit, in an unassuming, middle-of-the-road kind of way. The guy sat at the table. He took a black notebook from his jacket pocket and gestured for Reacher to get up from his spot on the floor and join him. My name's Walwork. It's early and I'm not a morning person, so let's get straight to the point. Why did you attack those men last night? Where's Detective Goodyear? Reacher said. He's here somewhere, Walwork said, but I'm handling this case. So, tell me, the fight at the diner, what started it? Those cretins did. Reacher folded his arms. They came after me. I gave them a chance to walk away. It's not my fault they were too stupid to take it. Why did they attack you then? You're the detective. You figure it out. There's no reason you can think of? Aside from stupidity? Okay. So I should put this down as a random, unprovoked attack? Unprovoked, yes. Random, no. They thought I was working with some insurance guy. They tried to warn me off. Why would they do that? You're the detective. Fine, don't help me. But you should certainly help yourself. Listen, I've just been to the hospital. You bang those guys up pretty good. They won't be able to work for quite a while. Won't be able to do much of anything. They're not happy about that. They're looking for some kind of payback.
Okay, let
Didn't
me
look
get up.
great to start with.
No.
I'm not disputing that. But get a few mothers on the jury, get them imagining you doing that kind of damage to their sons, you'd be taking a gamble. Reacher said nothing. Of course, there is another path we could take. These are not the smartest of individuals. I could probably change their minds, get them to drop all this talk of criminal charges. But if I did that for you, I'd need something in return. Such as the previous incident, the one involving Rusty Rutherford. Detective Goodyear was left with the sense that you weren't being entirely forthcoming. Level with me, and I'll see you get to walk out of here. Level with you how? Some guys tried to kidnap Rutherford. I stopped them. There's nothing more to tell. You followed Rutherford along the sidewalk for a spell, correct? Reacher nodded. Did you see him drop anything? In a trash can, maybe, or down a drain? No. After you intervened, before the officers arrived, did he try to hide anything? No. Could have been very small. A key or a flash drive? He didn't hide anything. Did you see him mail anything? No. At the diner, you two must have talked. Did he say anything about having a storage unit or a safety deposit box? No. Did he mention having been anywhere recently? No. But he did say he's leaving in a couple of days for a fishing cabin he has in Nova Scotia. But when he pulled out his pocketbook to pay for dinner, I saw he had a Mexican passport in there. a plane ticket, and a bunch of pesos. Walworth closed his notebook and set it down. Are you messing with me, Mr. Reacher? Why shouldn't I be? You're messing with me, detective. Or should I say agent? Walworth didn't respond. It's a little bit about the suit, Reacher said. A little bit about your questions, but mainly about your shoes. Walworth instinctively looked down at his feet. I bet they set you back 3 times what Detective Goodyear's cost, Reacher said. And I bet $1,000 he wouldn't swap. Not even if they were his size and brand new. Look at them.